Hello, my name is Joe van Dijk and welcome to my channel. You're watching Screenplay Essentials and this is episode 2. In episode 2, I've decided to create 8 archetypes that I'd like to present to you. Originally, I called them 7 archetypes, but I don't want to confuse the audience with the Magnificent 7 movie, so I thought let's just make Magnificent 8 archetypes, which is the hero archetype, the anti-hero archetype, the everyman archetype, the innocent archetype, the chosen man, the chosen one, the adventurer explorer archetype, and the lawyer and the detective archetypes. These 8 archetypes, but it's probably like 20 archetypes if you include the various subtropes throughout the episode 2. But these ones are often used as primary characters, main characters, protagonists, and in this episode we'll be talking about the hero archetype, which is basically the umbrella of episode 2, and all these other archetypes fall under this umbrella, and I will be talking about the hero archetype and the anti-hero in this episode. So let's look at the hero definition. So a hero by default is someone who saves someone. They are a hero, they're doing heroic activities to save another person. They are doing those acts through either self-sacrificing or selfless. They use their strength, they have the ability to inspire others, and their unwavering commitment to achieve their cause or their super objective. The hero is known to be brave, known to have unwavering resolve in the face of conflict, in the face of any sort of obstacles. They're essentially the ones who stand up when no one else will stand up or can't stand up, and they are the ones who defend other people and often is the voice for the people who can't speak up or can't defend themselves. They use those courageous attributes of themselves to help others other than themselves. Whilst not always perfect, the hero often finds themselves in a morally good arena and stands their ideology. Their values are tested through trials and errors and obstacles that they overcome, and they have a strong sense of what's right and wrong. They often find themselves into those top 3 categories in the alignment tool: lawfully good, neutral good, or chaotic good. They often put their own needs and safety and self-preservation, all those ideologies, aside to help other people and for the benefit of others. They often fall into those spots of leadership roles, and people often flock to that type of figure by default, because people don't want to put themselves in the forefront because of failure and the fear of failure. And when heroes rise up to show, like, I'm a leader, come and follow me, I will show you the way. If you think about Jack from Lost, he embodies that beautiful hero archetype when not only because of his occupation as a doctor, but the fact that people quickly adhere to his leadership and them trying to get off the island, for example. Avatar, that shows a paraplegic marine that jumps into an avatar and he befriends the nature and the aliens, and he successfully becomes their leader as he saves them from chaos and destruction. And it's basically the retelling of Pocahontas. And sometimes you can throw a span in the works where the one hero stands up, but then there's another hero that stands up, and those egos are competing against each other, and then the people don't know who to follow, or they follow the one camp or they follow the other camp. So it's not always heroes versus villains, it can be heroes versus heroes that are set into different sets of ideologies that can often create complexity in those type of stories. Now, often is the case when we think of heroes, we tend to move into that area of idealizing people, or that perfect example of a human being, that strong willpower. They're often always winners. But when you create a hero archetype as your protagonist and your only focus is the act of heroism, you can often create a very dull and type of one-dimensional character. And with exception to the persona protagonist that is designed by using a positive flat type of character throughout the story, there's a difference between creating a fake heroic character when the audience can see through that fakeness, especially when the character is narcissistic or the character has negative traits that contradict their heroic ideology, and the audience can see through that fake armor, that fake identity. If you do that, you that perfection can be a bad thing. But when you create a hero that are selfless, that are humble, that stand up for other people, that put others in front of themselves, and they ones who the audience automatically latch on like the strongest type of magnet compared to the anti-hero, for example. But in reality, heroes, they call for flaws and weaknesses and imperfections. They have troubled pasts. They have certain beliefs and ideologies that may cripple them. They may have trouble fighting those demons inside of them. It's often an uphill battle of them struggling with poor choices or bad choices that they make along the way, or they face impossible dilemmas that forces them to go left or right. There's a whole range of list of weaknesses and flaws that you can delve into. They can be ideal. They can have a bad obsession about a prop or a love interest. They can have delusions of grandeur. They can have tendencies to be single-minded and stubborn with their approach to problem solving or decision making. That can often fall into the reckless category. They can be chaotic good. There's a famous CGI animation of a hero figure with an Arnold Schwarzenegger persona. The character keeps resetting, almost like a Groundhog Day, where he tries to take over the kingdom of that island, but then he always dies and then he respawns. And it takes a lot of time for this character to understand that he's doomed for failure, trying to solve his whole problem. Now, if I can add a bit of psychobabble into this conversation to help understand what an archetype is, Carl Jung's theory of archetypes proposes that there's a universal inherent predisposition in our human psyche that shapes our thoughts, our feelings, our behaviors. And these archetypes are patterns that allows us to experience the world around us, express ourselves through symbols and images. But according to Jung's individuation is the process of separating from the collective in order to create a unique individual. Now that means to strip away two things, the social mask and the false identity that the ego creates for itself in the development, that armor that we put on that shapes our identity, to strip that away from the unconscious influences of these archetypes. When you do that, you create narrative. You create the external world and you create the internal world. The purpose of this process is to create the hero's conscious. With a great consciousness, the hero can heal the split between the conscious and the unconscious mind by bringing what the hero doesn't know about themselves in their unconscious to the front, in the front seat, the driving seat. Therefore, the hero is tasked to absorb and understand these unconscious components of themselves, of their psyche, so that they are not overwhelmed by them. And the ones who fall short or are unable to identify, understand, and overcome those things fall into a tragedy. When the hero needs to confront and defeat the monster of darkness, it's in reality their expected triumph of the conscious over the unconscious. And when they are fighting this dragon or this monster, it's their conquering over this thing and not being devoured by it. The narrative journey is symbolic of personal growth, self-actualization, and it reflects the internal process, the struggling to overcome fears and obstacles and push their capabilities beyond normal expectations or limitations. If you think about Luke Skywalker that faces Darth Vader and the darker side of that story and the truth, or Frodo that needs to destroy the ring despite the shadow archetype that has a grip over him that's embodied into that ring. In mythology, the hero has a quest to get the prop, the ring, the treasure, the princess, the object of desire, the potion, the elixir, whatever it is. But in reality, those things are metaphors of the character's feelings and desires and unique potential. Now, lastly, it would be a crime not to mention the hero's journey. It's Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, that it's a specific narrative structure that the hero archetypes often undergo. There's a reason why Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter, The Hobbit, The Matrix the Dune franchise, the reason why these things are so successful is because they follow the hero's journey, whether they're in its purest form or whether they borrow components of it and still tell a compelling story with regards to the hero archetype that they have. So let's look at a couple of subtropes that you find under the hero archetype. The first one, the classic traditional epic hero. These are ones who uses a specific skill or talent that they use to battle a powerful foe. It's often a good versus evil type of story. And they typically, whatever they battle, the monster, the villain, antagonist, or trying to solve a world problem in the external world is a reflection of the internal world, as I've mentioned. It coincides with the internal battle or struggles that they have with identity or a powerful temptation maybe, or even hubris. The traditional classic hero is known to be courageous. They can be arrogant, they can be impulsive, and it's often a self-sacrificing thing to obtain whatever their super objective is. Homer defined the epic hero as a godlike type of character. They're human and they're very flawed, but they often face extraordinary supernatural beings or monsters or godlike figures. The classical epic hero often faces a villain of some sort. In Greek mythology, for example, heroes were often known to be extremely brave. They've got a quality of bravery, them going the extra mile. They have unique skills and unique abilities that helps them in their journey to solve whatever world problem that they're facing. They can be very stubborn as well, like a reluctant hero that I will discuss in the second episode. But they can also be anti-heroes, and I will go into that at the end of the episode as well. So there's different layers of how you can define a hero. Originally, the epic hero is someone from noble birth that lives in a mythical world. If you think about King Odysseus and the Odyssey, that gets lost at sea and he gets tempted by the sirens. Or Perseus, the clash of the titans, or the clash of human determination versus predetermined fate by the Greek gods. They often grow to be mighty warriors, and their journey, their victories, their triumphs become legends in their homeland and across borders. Jason and the Argonauts is a legendary Greek hero that takes a group of adventurers and they undergo a very troublesome quest to obtain the Golden Fleece, in which their voyage forces them to battle harpies, a bronze statue, Talos, and even a skeleton army. An epic hero showcases or demonstrates the core values of culture and tradition and attributes of the author's time period in the society that they find themselves in. If they honor a specific theme, that will be the core central focus of those stories. Like Hercules embodies physical strength and endurance, or the Monkey King that represents spiritual growth and cunning, or the outlaw bandit Robin Hood that steals from the rich to feed the poor. In Christianity, the hero archetype manifests in a distinct form of sainthood. On their paths, they face heavy moral dilemmas and moral concepts that they can struggle over, divine trials, and often requires the hero to let go of the old life, the old past, and adopt a new. David who slew Goliath. David had a massive hero's journey component to his story. The classic and epic heroes often used in cartoons to entertain children because their stories, their moral stories, are often utilized in the expansive imagination of children. Shrek is a beautiful example of a unlikely hero archetype seen in an ogre that's often used as a villain or a monster in any type of story. But the story makes fun of and juxtaposes Shrek with Prince Charming. Prince Charming being the stereotypical hero archetype. It's actually a very nasty person, a very like type of narcissist. And Shrek shows constant bravery throughout the story. And even though reluctantly he goes on quests to do the good thing at the end of the day, and he picks up friends along the way, despite what he believes and despite his internal flaws of being alone and rejected by society as an outcast. And the secondary characters flock to him because they see a virtuous person within him and being a heroic figure. And remember, the classic or epic hero doesn't always have to be a mythological figure. It can be an ordinary person as well. If you look at Reacher, this TV series, it's an ex-army officer that often takes law in his own hand as a chaotic good character and continuously shows his heroic nature throughout the narrative and the stories that he undertakes. Paul Newman's character in The Towering Inferno, a premiere party for the world's tallest skyscraper catches fire, in which 300 guests are trapped, and a very heroic fire chief works with a honorable architect to try to solve it from the inside and the outside, but their efforts become quickly a battle against time. Tarantino's Django Unchained shows a bounty hunter that frees a slave called Django and recruits him to help him to kill someone that he's after, and the bounty hunter helps Django get back his wife, and their journey leads them to a powerful tycoon in which they try to infiltrate and devise a plan to try and rescue the wife. The next type of hero that we find is the action hero, specifically in the action genre. This is a showcase of a specific heroic character that showcases their unique skills and talents to solve their world problem, their crisis that they face. And it's often a very plot-driven story. And these characters often have a positive, flat story with regard to them as being persona protagonist. But of course, you get the round character in this genre as well. Naturally, this is a continuation from the Western genre that often showcased an action hero cowboy, but the 80s and the 90s made these characters very popular, especially after the blockbuster craze from the 70s. These characters often had a strong moral compass. They were selfless spirit. They were very loyal to their cause and very obsessive into getting the job done, and often push their abilities beyond normal measures and go above and beyond the normal expectations of what a hero is to get the job done. They are very skillful with the weapons and tools that they have at their disposal, and like I've said, martial arts are often a key component in these types of films and these characters. Whether it's gunplay or with their fists, they often generate a very high entertaining value in the genre of the action genre, and even in the espionage type of genre where we get the Mission Impossible films. The action hero often have similar personality types, whether they are driven by a defender type of personality or a challenger, or they can often be very individualistic in their personalities, in the way how they are obsessed and driven to do the right thing. And again, there's a massive emphasis on their skill sets, whether it's martial arts or their weaponry, their knowledge of useful weapons and bombs, diffusing bombs, driving very fast cars, all those things that contribute to often the male audience. As for the aesthetics, they are very athletic and fit. They are required to do extensive chase sequences or be involved in a massive gunfight in a closed environment. They are not ones who are obese or lazy or passive. They are very, very proactive. And even if they struggle to chase the villain, they would find a way to never give up. The action hero also shares common super objectives, whether it's to save someone, to rescue someone, to defend someone, to stop a bomb or a nuclear threat, to stop the villain, or if it's a Bond villain that tries to take over the world, to stop that from happening. Or it's someone who is driven by vengeance or revenge, that something bad happened to their family, or they just have a chip on their shoulder that they have to correct, and it's either to apprehend them for justice, or whether it's to settle a score or take out every bad guy that aims a weapon at them. They come in all shapes and forms and sizes. Some can be from the army or ex-veterans. Some can be even a president, like Harrison Ford's character in Air Force One. It's an action hero type of character. Now, with regards to their morality, the action hero can be often categorized as chaotic good. They will do chaotic things in the name of good. Some of them are lawful, and some of them are also anti-heroes, but they often have this very strong sense of what's right and wrong. Caesar is a beautiful example of a Swedish a soldier that prospector that finds gold, and Germans steal the gold from him, so he's forced to hunt them down and retrieve the gold. And this is also a good example where plot can be over the top in some cases and forgivable when you see the injustice being done to the action hero. Even if they carry a secret like the film Nobody that shows an ordinary family man that is actually has a deeper and darker secret that gives him the ability and capability of doing these extraordinary things in the action genre and as an action hero, make them fear something or show how they struggle in their ordeals with their confrontation with the enemy or the overwhelming enemy forces that can be very violent. There's a red flag that you should always be aware of when writing an action hero, that they can seem to be invincible, and you should always be careful about those things when they have plot armor 5000 and enemies are shooting at them but they always miss, or hand grenades are thrown at them but they don't go off, or they always escape some sort of explosion and they never get hurt. When you have a female protagonist that does that, they're often known as Mary Sues, that are shown as the strong, perfect woman that doesn't need any training, or they can just do everything and everything's perfect. And some of the Mary Sues are often portrayed as narcissistic in their negative behaviors towards men and society. And the Gary Stu, which is the opposite of the Mary Sue, like Aragon that happens to fly a dragon without any sort of training, or the main character from Real Player One that happens to be the perfect gamer that never fails. It can be the list of male characters from the Fast and Furious franchise that jumps out of airplanes and do crazy stunts, or any other type of characters that are so perfect they have no imperfections at all. And one can even say Tom Cruise's character in Mission Impossible has become a Gary Stu type figure. So just remember, when you create action heroes, that their flaws and their weaknesses should be a very effective component in them as a character to make them complex, make them real, make them relatable to the audience, as opposed to someone who's this perfect human being. Because if bullets bounce off of them and there's no risks, the audience may lose interest or invested into the empathy of that character. They may stop rooting for them because they know nothing happens to this character, so why must I bother watching the film or the end of the movie when I know nothing is happening to this character? And this is something that Hollywood struggles to understand, that if the action heroes are invincible and nothing happens to them ever throughout the story, then you lose the interest of the audience. Okay, next we get the superhero, and as the name suggests, it's a hero with superpowers. Now, there are a couple of ways or reasons how a hero obtains these superpowers, whether they are born as a superhero or whether some sort of accident happens and they obtain that superpower. And naturally, superpowers are often the thing that draws in the younger audience, obviously because of its visual effects and its awe with its magnificent hero archetype that has powers. Even if you think about the ancient Greece stories, Hercules would be the first superhero, and today we have superheroes with capes and masks and all sorts of different powers. And what makes a superhero is that often they are facing super villains. It's often an extremely super villain that wants to destroy the world or wants to cause havoc and destruction, and the only opposite to that sort of extreme power would be a superhero that has powers to battle those extreme forces. And also, superheroes have interesting backstories, the reason why they have obtained their superpowers in the first place, and especially their loved ones, or the fact that they have to hide themselves and not get caught, or their backstories are often very rich in the entertainment value. And superheroes are often the good guys. They fall into that good morality of lawful goodness, neutral goodness, chaotic goodness, and some of them can be neutral. If you think about the Hulk, which is a chaotic neutral, Doctor Strange, which is a true neutral, there are a couple of variations in those alignments, but the series The Boys kind of flips that on its head, where the superheroes in that world are actually the evil ones, and the whole story is about these group of characters that are humans that are fighting these superheroes, and one of them actually obtains powers to stand a chance against Homelander. Now, quickly, there are a couple of superheroes that you find. The first one, obviously, is a godlike or demigod type of superhero that is born with these extreme powers. They come from a rich, noble heritage, myth and legends that these superheroes come from. If you think about Wonder Woman, or like Thor from Asgard in the Norwegian mythology. Some superheroes are moral symbols that represents a unique trait or theme or something that's special to society or that era that they come from. You think about Captain America, that represents the home of the brave, the freedom, justice, and a courageous American. Then you get the gadget user. These ones often use their tools and their skills to their advantage. It's like the action hero, but to an extreme extent. If you think about Batman, very famously with its tool, or Black Widow or Hawkeye, those characters are superheroes and how they utilize their resources. Then you get the ability user. These ones are as a physical component to them, whether they stretch or they become invisible or they become cold or they erupt into flames. And the speedsters like the Flash. Then you get the powerhouse. Naturally, these ones operate through their strength. If you think about Luke Cage, the Incredible Hulk, and the Thing, and even Ant-Man that goes to extreme super small size, and whatever he touches goes flying through the air. Then you get the magic users who uses magic as the source of their power, and the extraordinary supernatural mutants, ones who come from a plane of existence that's not from our own Earth. If you think about Silver Surfer and a whole range of unique characters that doesn't originate from Earth. And then lastly, the everyman superhero. These are normal, innocent, everyman archetype characters that accidentally touches something or gets a gift or something happens to them that gets them their superpowers, and then they are forced to deal with their conflict and solve their world crisis with the power that they have, and some of them overcome their obstacles in whichever way. So Marvel is a fantastic example if you want to create superheroes for your own stories. Look through those movies and that extreme range of films that they did. And the reason why Marvel was so successful in comparison with DC is because of the objective and subjective writing. Marvel followed a subjective approach to the superheroes when they did 3 movies for Iron Man, 3 movies for Captain America. When those characters are treated with a subjective manner, you then have a beautiful a foundation in which resulted in a higher entertainment value. Whereas DC, for example, still struggles. They still make superhero movies that clutter the screen with multiple superheroes, and everyone has to share that screen time. And it's also worth mentioning Captain America Civil War, where we see both superheroes, Captain America and Iron Man, facing each other with a distinct difference in ideologies, where one believes they need to be policed and governed, and the other one believes in individualism and their freedom to act when they need to, and not to be restricted by whatever politics that's involved in them saving the day. This film also beautifully shows a puppet master behind the scenes that orchestrated this conflict. Then we get the tragic hero. This tragic hero is first defined by Aristotle in the study of Greek drama. This type of character is destined to a road to devastation. They experience a decline arc. They're ones who their stories end in a tragedy as opposed to a victory. It's often sad endings and not happy endings. And Aristotle believed that a good tragedy is determined by invoking fear and pity in the audience with regards to this character, and it's a fundamental component when experiencing a catharsis in storytelling. This would be like Oedipus with his hubris that leads to his own downfall. Hamlet's indecisiveness contributes to his own downfall as well. And Macbeth's ambitions and the prophecy that's almost like a chosen one type of character that essentially leads him into a tyrannical sense, and ultimately his and Lady Macbeth's demise. According to Aristotle, there's a couple of things that is important to remember when thinking of tragic heroes. The first one is that they come from a noble background or a rich, higher status background or environment. And because of their tragic flaw, they ultimately spiral in a decline arc and end on a tragedy. It's also important to remember that this character is virtuous. Yeah, you should make this character a heroic in his attributes. He's got a good sense of morality, what's right and what's wrong. And these positive traits makes the character compelling to watch to the audience. They need to have some sort of good sense of morality. Which brings us obviously to the flaw. It has to be a compelling, interesting flaw of this character. And this flaw is the cause for them to experience their downfall. It's not something else, or the villain or the antagonist, even though the antagonist or villain can contribute to that, but it's the character's tragic flaw that causes them to experience a tragedy in the end. It's important to note that this tragic flaw can't be something despicable or unforgivable. You have to think about the audience and their connection with how they relate to this character in regards to empathy. This type of character still needs to be have some sort of heroic element to that story, because that story ends in either them suffering extreme consequences or they end up being dead. And the audience feels extreme feelings at that point. Then lastly, the tragic hero suffers a reversal of fortune, something that happens in that story that completely flips their world upside down and forces them to go through these ordeals in a suffering component, and they struggle to overcome them, but they never overcome them. It's a tragedy of a tragedy of a tragedy until they ultimately end in the worst place possible, whether they're still alive or they end up dying. But the important component of a tragic hero is that they do not deserve their fate. It's that the tragic flaw is a cause to the result of the tragedy, but the audience goes away thinking they didn't deserve that fate that caused them to die in the end. When a character deserves their fate, this is a tragic figure. A tragic figure is different from a tragic hero, because a tragic hero is still a traditional classical hero that they do not deserve their ending, where a tragic figure often deserve their ending. Tragic figures can be seen in a dual protagonist in the film Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, that shows these two characters, a married couple who make up lies. They invent a fake child and they also kill off this fake child, and how they torment each other in their decline as tragic figures. In the most successful tragedies, it can often be a heroic archetype that has a noble and just quest, super objective that they're trying to obtain, but it leads to horrible consequences that they can't control. A tragic hero is responsible for those watery eyes, crying endings that results the audience in walking away thinking, wow, what a beautiful story. This unfortunate character, the character fight the big fight, but unfortunately they were unlucky, or fate was against them, or their own flaw caused their downfall. So always remember, when you create a tragic hero, that they are still a traditional classical hero. They've got a tragic flaw, and very importantly, they need to generate sympathy and empathy in the audience. One of the best examples of a tragic hero is seen in Star Wars, that from episode 1 to episode 6. It's a story about Anakin Skywalker that becomes Darth Vader and gets saved by Luke Skywalker at the end. So those are the extremes that you often find with heroes, and it goes all the way to superheroes. But if you go back to normalcy or normal characters, we find the very popular everyman archetype and the innocent archetype. But I'll go into that with part 2. Otherwise, this episode will be 2 hours long or 3 hours long. And then part 3, I'll talk about the lawyer and the detective archetypes. And part 4 will be the chosen one and the adventure, explorer archetypes. All of these characters are essentially subtropes of the hero archetype, but they also stand alone as archetypes themselves because of their popularity and reuse, as well as the comic hero. The comic hero, I've dedicated episodes that deals with the comedy protagonist that we often find in those type of genres. And then lastly, the anti-hero, in which I'll go into now. Then finally we get to the anti-hero, the very popular and famous anti-hero. This is a subtrope of the hero archetype class, but the popularity of the anti-hero is so significant throughout cinema history that the anti-hero can stand alone as an archetype. The anti-hero is known to lack qualities that heroes have. For example, they may lack strong morals, they may lack the selfless nature of a hero. They often have self-interest that benefits themselves. Ones who are rejected by society, they're the lone wolves, and they're ones who call to adventure forces them to do heroic deeds. Being rude, being obnoxious, being self-centered, selfishness, envious, and they can also be violent, and they do not believe in the heroic act at all, and it's only about them and themselves. Other than selflessness, these characters can also be antisocial. They see other humans as corruptible, insufferable, and they have often a disdain for other human beings. Some can be from self-destructive nature and also unconventional ideologies, things that they believe because of their wound or their trauma, and how they interact with the world, and often justifies, if they're a criminal, justifies those activities. They are the ones who stand aside while someone else picks up the fight to solve the conflict. They're ones who don't want to necessarily put themselves at risk, and there's a reason for all of those things. Now, there's something I've noticed that a lot of people and a lot of vloggers and people who write like these short articles, they often confuse the anti-hero with the immoral protagonist. The amoral, immoral protagonist ones, like I've mentioned in the previous episodes, that they want to do bad things, whether they know they're doing bad things or they choose the evil things, or they are unaware of they lack morals and they lack moral compass and they do those bad things. An anti-hero does not fall into that category. The anti-hero falls in the hero category, and the reason why people confuse these two is because the anti-hero often shares negative traits with the immoral protagonist. These characters often know pain. When these characters are written, the audience can see that these characters carried some sort of weight with them. And because of their wound, they put on that armor that creates their identity, and we can see that the character suffers either in the past life or currently in how they deal with the conflict at the moment. They were often punished by doing the good thing, and now they're not doing the good thing anymore, and the plot and the story often forces them to still do the good thing regardless of how they feel. At the end of the day, the anti-hero is still a hero. It's just the opposite side of the coin. When the hero is seen to be doing good things as a selfless type of character, the anti-hero acts in their own self-interest. It's just a different methodology condition in how they behave and how they operate in themselves. Anti-heroes are known to challenge the norms. When the classical traditional hero jumps into action to save the day, the anti-hero is reserved. They don't want to risk their own lives to help other people. So that type of point of view can be a unique perspective to the type of story that you're telling. Whether you're using whatever genre that you're using it can be a superhero that has an anti-hero, or it can be a chosen one archetype that's being an anti-hero, or whichever component that you're utilizing. It can be a protagonist, antagonist that's also an anti-hero. Anti-heroes reflect the realism, the human complexity. They are very interesting and well-rounded, in-depth type of complex characters, because we see them value their own self-perseverance, and it makes logical sense to us when we see a character that doesn't want to put themselves into harm's way. And when the story almost forces them to reveal their compassionate side, caring for others, or even self-sacrifice, we as an audience empathizes with them truly, because we understand where they come from, we understand their troubled past, and we know they're the ones who are there to solve the world crisis in whichever way, despite being honorable in the act of being heroic. And the reason why they've got broken compasses is because their flawed personalities and ideologies and philosophies are a result of their traumatic backstories that causes them pain and suffering, or being punished for something that they didn't do, and they are forced to see the world in their own unique and different way. Most of the anti-heroes would even go to work for the bad guy to get the money and ignore what they're doing and get on with their life until that bad guy, that bad person crosses that line and forces the anti-hero to act and do the good thing in the end. Or using unpleasant tactics to get the job done, regardless of putting everyone else or other people's lives at risk. The anti-hero versus the anti-villain. The anti-villains are often ones who do villainous things for a noble cause. They have a mindset that they're doing the good thing, but their actions are villainous in their pursuit to get that super objective, whereas the anti-hero does the good thing, and despite their broken negative traits. However, very, very important that the anti-hero is often seen in the neutral alignment. They don't have to be rude or violent or criminal at all. They can be simply ones who are who separate themselves from the good side and the evil side. They're often ones that dwell in the neutrality. But the key thing is that they often gravitate towards the lawful neutral side. Some of them can be chaotic neutrals, but they tend to move towards the good side of the alignment because they're still heroes at the end of the day. Now, there's a couple of anti-heroes that we find. The first one is a lawful neutral classic anti-hero. These ones are, like I've mentioned, they operate on their own beat of their own drum, but at the end of the day, they still do their heroic thing. This is by default the classic anti-hero that can be selfish, rude, obnoxious, but at the end of the day, they know what's right from wrong, and they move towards that alignment of goodness. Very popular in the film noir detective stories, where these characters often are the protagonist as anti-heroes. And this classical anti-hero often finds themselves in a situation or scenario where they reluctantly have to do the good thing anyway, or they reluctantly have to be the hero at the end of the day. This classical anti-hero is often seen with the cowboy characters from Clint Eastwood, from the spaghetti westerns that shows a reluctant classical anti-hero, or the more darker versions of the anti-hero shown in Hang 'em High, High Plains Drifter, and the very iconic Outlaw of Jossie Wales. Mel Gibson's character in Ransom is a classical anti-hero because when this millionaire's son gets kidnapped, he actually antagonizes the antagonist. He makes the matters worse, and they're also shown to suffer the consequences of those actions, and the father goes above and beyond to get his son back. Another great example of a classic anti-hero is seen in the movie Hero, with Dustin Hoffman's character reluctantly saving a group of passengers from an airplane disaster, and his friend being a homeless person, stealing his identity to get the reward money. But the story juxtaposes these two characters, with a homeless person actually being a hero archetype and Dustin Hoffman being a classical anti-hero. These two make a deal to keep the hoax going so that the hero archetype can take the attention, the media attention, and get the spotlight, while the anti-hero, being the unsung hero, and the anti-hero is just in it for the money, stays behind the scenes. Then we find the knight in sour armor. These ones are often true neutral. They operate in a very cynical, disillusioned, or even have a pessimistic outlook on life, and they treat everyone and everything with a sarcastic attitude. Sawyer from Lost is a great example of a knight in sour armor. He's this cowboy type of persona with a chip on his shoulder because of what happens in his past, and we see the character transforms beautifully into the hero archetype when he gets trapped in the past. And it's often due to their backstories. Perhaps a hero was very heroic in their approach to doing the good thing, but then was punished by society or punished by someone that they loved, or it's often a really tragic type of thing that occurs with them, that they became getting punished by the system for doing the good thing, and because of that wound, that character wound that they carry with them, that sours their perspective or how they view the world. So they don't do the heroic thing anymore. They act in their own self-interest. Or Kill Bill, that shows this anti-hero that takes vengeance and revenge on the assassins that betrayed her. The Last Boy Scout shows two anti-heroes that is forced to work together as burned out, hard-boiled cops, and they eventually put their grievances aside to solve the murder on the case at hand. Another lawful neutral anti-hero is the pragmatic anti-hero. These are ones who uses unconventional methods to get to their super objectives. They can even be brutal and very honest and very dangerous in how they obtain those things, and they don't mind crossing the lines to get to what they want, but they still act in a lawful sense in their neutrality. And not just the cowboys, but even samurais. If you think about Yojimbo or Sanjuro, this iconic character is known to be an anti-hero, often pragmatic, with him originally intending to exploit the conflict between two rival gangs, but these actions are more results of the circumstances he finds himself in survival mode. Another good example of a pragmatic anti-hero is Ripley from Aliens, that is shown anti-corporation, no nonsense type of character that still does the good thing at the end. Then you get the dishonest anti-hero, or hero in name only. They are ones who are very dangerous, very ruthless in their tact. They still do the good thing like an anti-hero is, but they blur the lines between amoral or immoral qualities. And this is where people confuse the anti-hero with the immoral protagonist, because they share those negative traits that I've mentioned. They can even be lazy, what they do, or apathetic, or be criminal in their past experiences or past lives, that be criminal activities. But at the end of the day, they always do the good thing, to be heroic despite their ruthless nature. The Western Veracruz shows a beautiful example of a dishonest anti-hero that teams up with an immoral protagonist. Both these characters try to steal the gold that they are tasked to protect. There's a bit of a double crossing that happens between three characters, but at the end of the day, the lawful neutral dishonest anti-hero still does the good thing by not stealing the gold and giving the gold back to the Mexicans, and kills the immoral protagonist. An example of a dishonest anti-hero can be seen with Ash in the Evil Dead series, especially the one where he ends up in the past and he's shown to not give a damn about the people around him, especially the peasants, and there's them stuck in the same situation as he is, but he only cares about himself and trying to get back to the future, but gradually shows his compassionate side as he saves the day. Then you get the anti-hero trickster protagonist. These ones are very popular, known as ones who have acting mischief, chaos, and they're very unpredictable. Now, generally speaking, the trickster is often ones who are associated with the antagonists and villains, but when they are in the opposite side of that coin, when they do the good thing, they are the anti-hero trickster. They challenge conventions and norms, and they disrupt the order of things, and they are often a catalyst for things to change in a mundane world. And the anti-hero trickster are not clowns. They are ones who are often multi-dimensional, very clever, very intelligent. They are ones who are playing the game by knowing that they are cheating, and they often get away with those things to obtain the good thing at the end of the day. The anti-hero tricksters are ones who play 4D chess. They, because of their neutral stance and their unpredictability, they can move into both the good alignment and the evil alignment. But if they're anti-hero trickster, they move towards the good alignment, and that's where they pull the rug underneath the audience and other main characters when they end up doing a very heroic thing despite their character. Marvel's Loki is a prime example of this, of an anti-hero trickster that is known to be mischief and deceiving, and as a thirst for chaos and disrupting order, until he's made aware that he's actually a hero, and at the end of the day he does what it takes to save the day, and self-sacrificing component in them saving the timeline. And even Better Call Saul. Saul is a trickster anti-hero. He's always a few chess moves ahead of everyone else. So in conclusion, I hope you can see there's a clear distinction between a hero archetype and the anti-hero archetype, even though the anti-hero is a subtrope of the hero archetype, the umbrella of the hero archetypes, but the anti-hero can stand on its own, and they are quite separate from each other, even though they fall into the same camp. And a lot of people often use the anti-hero by default because it creates complexity in the protagonist when a character doesn't want to do the heroic thing, and the call to adventure often forces them to wake up and do the good thing at the end of the day. But don't forget about the hero archetype, because the hero archetype, when we see that character on screen, and they're often crippled by their flaws and their weaknesses, they're often ones who are not with their chest out and I'm the perfect human being that can do the job at hand. But we can see when a character is humble in them, trying to do the good thing. And there's great reasons to balance these things, because the cop in Beverly Hills Cop shows a traditional classical hero with anti-hero tendencies. Rather than a straightforward classical anti-hero, it consistently shows bravery, resourcefulness, and there's always ways to fuse a hero with anti-hero tendencies but still remain a classical hero. And don't get me wrong, the anti-hero and the hero are very popular. If you look at these three characters in Game of Thrones, for example, Jon Snow, extremely popular as a hero archetype, despite his background and despite the underdog component and him being virtuous, humble, noble in his pursuit to uphold the best and the good of everything, protect the realm from the biggest threat. And if you look at Arya Stark, which is a anti-hero that's doing the more dishonest type of anti-hero quality, or Daenerys, that is a pragmatic anti-hero. All three characters are very popular, but you can see the distinct differences in their personalities from the hero archetype versus the anti-hero archetype. And lastly, if you put these characters on a continuum type of line, you can see that the hero and the anti-hero and the action hero and the superhero, the chosen one and the everyman archetype hero, they all fall into that one camp of being heroic characters in their classical protagonist types of fashion. There's a bit of a split between the two, because the ones often suffer their own consequences of doing bad things, and the other camp is doing the good things. Even the anti-hero who despises heroism, he or she still does the good thing at the end of the day. And as I've mentioned in the previous episode, that when the immoral protagonist experiences a reversal arc or a redemption arc, they go back to the anti-hero. In the next episode, I'll go into the everyman archetype and the innocent archetype. These are also subtropes of the hero archetype, but they can stand alone as archetypes themselves because of their popularity. But there's a couple of subtropes that they also have that I'll go into and explain a bit. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I see you in the next episode.